I don't want to say it's open-ended because God left it open-ended depending on what we do, but maybe that is the case. Maybe God did leave it open-ended because he's waiting for us to make certain moves to see what we do, to how he's going to handle it. Hey, and welcome to day 199 of Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and I am reading through the Bible in 1 year, 365 days. I am using the 1 year chronological Bible reading plan, which is available online at oneyearbibleonline.com. It is a free downloadable reading plan. Hopefully one of these days I'm going to get the link into my description, but as of right now, I just have on the bottom, it should say oneyearbibleonline.com. And that is where you would go. You would go download a free reading plan and you would use that with your own Bible. And so it goes daily in chronological order. And so you would have a reading that would fill you up for an entire year. So today we are doing Isaiah. We're in the book of Isaiah. And so if you have been here before, if you have or have not, my main goal in doing this is that I want you to be closer to God. I want to become closer to God. So my whole purpose is to have a closer relationship with the Lord. But I really want everyone to be reading their Bible. I think that it is really important for those of us that have the availability to have the Word to be reading the Word. I got a funky hair, sorry. To be reading the Word because it is the most important way for us to be in relationship with the Lord, right? So for those who don't have a Bible, this would be a different story, but so many of us do. And so that's him, right, giving you an opportunity to learn who he is in a very relationship-oriented kind of way. And so I know there's this expression that's out there, like, it's not religion, it's relationship. And while I guess the phrase sounds a little bit hokey and a little bit outdated, the reality is much like with a spouse or with a child or with a parent, you are and hopefully should be in relationship with God, right? So if you are in relationship with him, that means you know him. Just like you know what your parents' birthday is, you know your kid's favorite color, you know your spouse's favorite food, right? Like so, or your best friend's favorite movie. This is what God has given to us. So he has shared all of these things about himself with us in this book, and then he has put it into a big book and given it to us for us to have and for us to be able to read it, right? So yes, I am also going to plead with you to be in prayer with the Lord, to be open to what the Spirit is saying to you. But for us, not saying this one outweighs that one, but for us, we have it. So we can have all of those things, right? We have the blessing of having all of those things. Right now, we are in the time of Isaiah, and the time of Isaiah is in the early 700s. So about 700 to 740 BC is when Isaiah was a prophet. I think he was prophesying about both the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah. And it looks like he's also prophesying. Profiting was not right. That means he's making money. Prophesying about the entire world. So about everyone that's on the world, at least everyone that is in the range of Israel. So I say that because there are a lot of times where he says all the earth, but he really focuses all of his speech and his speaking around all the nations surrounding Israel. So I don't know if that's a term that he uses that means sort of the earth as they knew it at that time, right? Like anything surrounding that they can see, feel, taste, touch, right? Hear, get letters from, like all those things. Or if he means literally the world, which he may have, right? We might not have information about that, but he may have meant literally the world. So just kind of those things to be open to. I don't want to say one is right or wrong, but they're just sort of two options to look into and to think about. Okay. So again, we're in the time of Isaiah. Hezekiah is king. Israel has been taken away, and Judah knows that Israel has been taken away. The northern kingdom has been taken away. So here we start with, this is written. They're not 100% sure when this is written, so we don't know the timeline, right? Isaiah isn't saying, I prophesy this in this year, I prophesy this in that year, and some of these prophecies might be way in the future, and so there's not a date on here. And I think that there's a reason for it. So I'm hoping I'm going to remember to get into that in a little bit. But I think that that's important, that there's not a date on there for a reason. I think when when we do see that there's dates in the Bible, which we do, like Genesis is very clear. There's this amount of time, there's that many years, right? Like there's a lot of times in Genesis and other books that, and in Kings and Chronicles and all these other books, that they very much focus on timeline. So we know where they are, so we can look those things up in history and know whether they are true or not true. And then there's these prophecies that are a little bit loosier goosier, right? And I think there's a reason for them to be a little bit loosier goosier. And again, I'm going to kind of hit what I think about that in a little bit. So here we have, it says in verse 1, see, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. Sorry, this is, I don't even think I gave this information. I'm sorry. We are in day 199. It's Isaiah 24 through 27 and 29. And the date on your calendar is July 17th. I don't even think I got into that. Here we are 5 minutes in. So if you're listening, you know what date we're on. So in Isaiah 24, see, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. One of the things that he notes here is it's going to be the same for all people, right? So it's not like the rich are going to stay or the poor are going to stay or the ones with better jobs are going to stay or the priests are going to stay, right? It doesn't say any of that. It's saying everyone. And so there's going to be some form of scattering everywhere. He's going to lay waste and destroy the earth, and that could mean any number of things. And the people are going to scatter. Verse 3, it says the earth will be completely laid waste and totally plundered, which is interesting because who's going to plunder it, right? So if the entire earth is laid waste, who's going to plunder it? Which leads me to believe that maybe it's not necessarily the entire earth. Maybe there's a slightly different meaning, right? Maybe it is all the people in that area, and someone from outside of that area is going to plunder it. Maybe somebody who doesn't even know the Lord our God, right? Like as he is. And it says the Lord has spoken this word. Then it says the earth dries up, the world languishes, right? The earth is defiled by its people. So the people who live on the earth are destroying everything in the earth, which we all know that we can discuss how we are destroying things in the earth. I read this book. It's called In the Heart of the Sea. And it's a true story. And it's a true story. And then from that true story came the story of Moby Dick, right? So the Heart of the Sea is based on reality. And the person who was a part of that and like who heard about it in there wrote Moby Dick. So, right. So I'm hoping those two things make sense. If you haven't seen the movie or read the book, those things are both two great things. Anyway, it is based on the whaling industry and the people in, I think it was New Hampshire or Rhode Island. It was one of those areas up in the Northeast corridor, New England area. And they were going out and they were whaling, right? So they were going on whaling ships and they were killing whales, bringing them back and making anything and everything with them. And I'm saying this because there was a point where there was so much whaling because they were making so much money off of all the things. Like they could make anything with it. They were making candles with it. They were making makeup with it. They were making things to heat your house with it. They were right. Like they were using any and every part. They were eating it. Like everything that could be used in a whale was used. So it was a huge moneymaker. So they were going out and they were risking life and limb. Like they were sailing all the way down, like from New England, like all the way down to the point of Africa. So they were going for weeks and months at a time. They were on the ship and people were dying. I'm telling you all of this because one of the things that they were doing is they were consuming so many whales that they were shifting the population, right? They were over hunting everything. So we do have a responsibility. We are laying waste to the earth. All that being said, I also want to point out we can't make it perfect either, right? Like, so we can't go, oh, well, just don't kill any more whales, let them all survive for eternity, and then the world is going to go back to perfect. I don't think that that is true either, because God is in control and he makes choices based on what he believes is good for all of us, right? So saying all that, going back to, it was just something that popped into my head. Going back to this is that we do defile the earth. Like it's just what we do. We get gas from the earth. We tear down trees so we can make, right? Like all these things that we need to build furniture. And I mean, look around me. I got wood everywhere around me. So we defile the earth. And sometimes we're good with the things that we do. We only use what we need, but more often than not, we just use what we want. And so the earth is defiled by its people. they have disobeyed the laws and violated the statutes. So this is kind of more, this is bigger, right? So they're defiling the earth, and then, the thing that God created, and then they are not listening to any of the rules or laws, right? They're not doing anything that they're supposed to do. So God makes a decision and he starts destroying. And it says there's very, very few people are left, right? The earth's inhabitants are burned up. Very few are left. Joy is turning to gloom, right? So they were happy and they were laughing and everything. And then joy is turning to gloom. City is left in ruins. And then it says in verse 13, so will it be on earth and among the nations as when an olive tree is beaten or when gleanings are left after a grape harvest. So like there's barely anything left. There's barely anything left on the tree. So like there's just a little bit left on there, but not really enough to do a whole lot with. He's using multiple verses, multiple tenses. Has it happened? Is it going to happen? Is it future tense happening, right? Like all of these things I'm not too sure of. Because then we go into verse 14 where it says, they raise their voices, they shout for joy. Now, if all of these things had already happened, I don't think they're going to raise their voices and shout for joy unless they don't understand that it's happening, which again, I think is a possibility, right? So like God could be doing all of these things and we're watching it happen, but we're so oblivious to the fact that it is happening. And we're like, woohoo, everything is great. Lord, thank you for all of the blessings. Thank you for giving me everything I want here on this earth, right? It says that they're given glory in the east and in the west. Verse 16, from the ends of the earth we hear singing, glory to the righteous one. So then Isaiah is like, I hear all these things, but Isaiah's like, I waste away. So Isaiah is the one who knows what's happening because God has prophesied it to Isaiah. So he knows what's happening. And he's like, the treacherous betray. With treachery, the treacherous betray. Terror and pits snare you. So all these bad things are coming. And then verse 20, it says, the earth reels like a drunkard. It sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls never to rise again. Is there a time coming? I'm going to say it has not come yet, right? Where the earth, because we're still living here and the earth is still providing for us. So is there a time coming that the rebellion, that the earth is going to fall, never to rise again, right? Or when it rises, is it going to be something different that's not the earth that we know as the earth? It says in verse 21, in that day, the Lord will punish the powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below. They're going to be herded together and prisoners bound together in a dungeon. So it's not just people on earth that he's doing this to. It's on earth and in the heavens, which, by the way, I don't think in the heavens has done anything worthy of that punishment. But because of everything that's happening on the earth, the Lord is mass destroying things. And again, there's going to be something left. So if you picture that olive tree again, that's sort of been destroyed by the wind, it's not completely gone, right? It looks like maybe there's some buds left, maybe there's a little bit of fruit left on the vine, but not much, right? It seems to be almost gone of everything. And then it says, the moon will be dismayed, the sun ashamed, for the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory. So this is where we end this chapter. Moving on to chapter 25, he's going to prophesy a little bit differently. He says, Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you and praise your name. For in perfect faithfulness, you have done wonderful things. And then it says, you have made the city a heap of rubble. Another night where I can't speak. You have made the city a heap of rubble and fortified town a ruin. The foreigner's stronghold, a city no more. It will never be rebuilt. So he's saying you've done wonderful things, and then he kind of lists things that don't seem that great. So my question, of course, is what does it mean? So then we move on. It says, therefore, because you have done this, strong people will honor you and ruthless nations will revere you. Also, you have been a refuge for the poor, for the needy, a shelter for the storm, right? And then it says, for the breath of the ruthless is like a storm driving against the wall and like the heat of the desert. You silence the uproar of foreigners as heat is reduced by the shadow of a cloud. So the song of ruthlessness is stilled. So ruthlessness is stilled. Strong people will honor you, and you are a refuge for the needy. I actually see this as three different groups. Now, I always caveat and say I could be wrong. This is what I see when I read it. It looks like there are three different groups. It looks like he's going to do this mass destruction, right? So this is what I'm picturing. He's doing this mass destruction on earth. And then the needy and the weak and the poor and the powerless, right? He is lifting all of those up. He is the refuge for those people. In my mind, I see those people as the humble that have full complete faith in the Lord, right? They have given anything and everything over to the Lord, and they have said, we are powerless against the powers. We give everything to you. It's your judgment upon us. You do whatever it is, right? Like all the just giving themselves wholeheartedly to the Lord. This is what I say. This is the weak and the needy. And then it says, but the strong peoples will honor you, and the ruthless nations will revere you, which to me looks like there's this in between ground that when he comes and they see it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the Lord. Look at what he's done, right? Look at this. Look at the power he has. So there's when he comes and does this mass destruction, they finally see him for who he actually is. This is who I think group 2 is. And then there's group 3, which is the uproar of foreigners, right? The breath of the ruthless, right? And so he says, you silence those. And then as heat is reduced by the shadow of a cloud, so the song of the ruthless is stilled. So the ruthless, right? So he's going to quiet and silence the ruthless. And so for me, this is a third group that they refuse to see who the Lord is. And so those will be permanently silenced. I don't know what your thoughts on it, but that's the way I see it. Now, of course, that leaves me with questions, right? Like, who are those groups? What does that mean? When does this happen, right? Obviously, that leaves so many questions of the way that God works here on the earth, right? And our responsibility, right, to respond to God. Then we move down to this next section, 6 through 8. It says, on this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all people. So there's something right now, there's a shroud over all peoples, whether it be protection or keeping us from him, but that's going to be massively destroyed, right? And then he's going to have all of these offerings. It's going to be on his mountain, and he's going to offer food to everybody. And then he's going to remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. So is this that time? I'm trying to separate myself. I'm really trying to separate myself because I got a title here, and the title here says praise for judgment and salvation. And so I want to remove myself from what other people say and just really focus on what I feel like this is saying. It seems to me there will be a time that comes, right, where there will now be, where that brokenness that is in us will be permanently removed. Now, has that happened already? Right? And some would say through the fulfillment of Jesus. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's a motorcycle. Is that going to happen in the far future when there's maybe something else, right? Something else that comes? I don't know. It leaves me again with some questions that I feel like maybe it could be either one of those things. It says, in that day, surely they will say, the people, right? All his people, I think. Surely this is our God. We trusted in him and he saved us. This is the Lord. We trusted in him. Let us rejoice and be glad. The hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain. So I think it's the land that will be the Lord's perpetual land. Moab's going to be trampled, right? As the straw is trampled. He's going to bring down the fortified walls, right? The Lord is kind of going to conquer all. I want to move down to this next section in chapter 26. Isaiah 26, it says, in that day, so I think we're continuing. In that day, there are a lot of things that say in that day. And I went back to the original, right? So the Hebrew of what that day, day means. And it seems to be, because to me, when I'm reading it contextually, it looks like it could be one day, or it could be a generation, like a time, a season, right? Like in that day of winter, right? Which is really the entire season of winter. In that day, it was so cold all the time. It certainly wouldn't have meant one day, right? When we use that expression. In that day, they were all rebellious. And it's funny because I realized it probably sounds like Christianity, but I actually mean Gen Xers because I'm a Gen Xer, and we're the ones who are like, you fell, you got a bruise, you're fine, walk it off, right? Gen Xers were driving at 14. So I was thinking like that. In that day, in my day, we walked, my parents would have said in my day, we walked to school 10 miles each way barefoot in the snow, right? Uphill. Like, so, right. Like, so I feel like this expression could signify, again, and it being prophecy, by the way, this is one of the things I wanted to hit on. It being prophecy, it could actually mean either of those things depending on the outcome of that prophecy. God knows what it means, but we don't necessarily know what it means until we see that prophecy come true. So we try and work through all these details and be like, this is it. This is the day the end is coming. This is right. The Pharisees did that. I know I'm going forward. The Pharisees did that and they were wrong, right? The Pharisees were like, this is who the Messiah is that's coming. This is what he looks like. And guess what? They were wrong. I think they were wrong. They don't think they were wrong. I think they were wrong because we saw we believe. We saw what the Messiah was, right? And so I think this could be the same thing. It could be a day and then we go, oh my gosh, did you remember that day where it was black and there were tornadoes and there were, right, this whole earth trembled. Or it could be a generation that we look back on and go, oh my gosh, remember that day, right? So I think that I don't want to say it's open-ended because God left it open-ended depending on what we do, but maybe that is the case. Maybe God did leave it open-ended because he's waiting for us to make certain moves to see what we do, to how he's going to handle it. All right, so in that day, this song's going to be sung in the land of Judah. Judah's going to sing this song in that day, whatever day this is, right? Mass destruction, but God saves his people. So Judah are his people, right? And he's saving Judah. And Judah's like, in this day, it says, we have a strong city. God makes salvation, saving us. God saves us, its walls and its ramparts, right? Like, so God does all the saving. Open the gates, Lord, that the righteous nation may enter. So open so we can come in. You will keep perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast. We have seen this all throughout scripture at this point. Who are the righteous? The ones who follow the Lord's laws, not to a T, not with perfection, not telling yourself, if I'm going to do this on the outside, but I'm not going to do this on the inside, but completely in our hearts, right? Turning our hearts towards the Lord and away from ourselves. And it says in here, so I wrote in here, like, God humbles the proud and he puts the oppressed on top, right? So he humbles those who dwell on high. Feet trample it down, the feet of the oppressed. So the oppressed are trampling down the humble in this. The path of the righteous is level. You, the upright one, make the way of the righteous smooth. Yes, Lord, walking in the ways of your laws, right? So this is what the righteous are doing. Your name and renown are the desire of our hearts. So I want to move down on this. It says, when your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness. The point of everything that he does is for us to learn. It is always for us to learn. His punishment, his blessings, his miracles, his earth, it is all for us to learn. It's for them to learn righteousness. But when grace, I love this one. When grace is shown to the wicked, they do not learn righteousness. Even in a land of uprightness, they go on doing evil and do not regard the majesty of the Lord. Lord, your hand is lifted high, but they don't see it. Let them see your zeal for your people and be put to shame. There are always going to be wicked among us. I'm sorry. It's probably an awful thing to say. And I'm not saying don't keep evangelizing or reaching out or being, right, like praying for people and all those kinds of things. And not judging them and being like, oh, you're the wicked, because you don't know. You have no idea from, they could be wicked today, but not wicked tomorrow. So, right, they could completely give their lives over to the Lord. But what he's saying is there is going to be wicked among us. There's going to be that in the end. And if you consistently show grace to them, they're not going to learn righteousness. So in my mind, when we, I feel like this is going to be a little bit rough for anyone who's listening. When we are seeker sensitive to the point where, and boy, I'm using Christian words, so I'm apologize. When we're seeker sensitive to the point where we're like, our doors are open. I don't care about anything except you walking in this door, and you can stay the same person today. You can stay the same person in 20 years. I'm going to preach the nicest thing from the pulpit that I can possibly preach to make sure that you don't leave. That is not what our God says. That is not who our God is, right? Our God is like, I give you these rules. I give you these lessons. I show you who I am. And when you listen, I give you grace. When you follow, you have all the grace. You have an abundant amount of grace, getting what you don't deserve. Because even though you're following my rules and my laws, right? Like even though you are trying to be righteous, there's still sin there, and you're still going to sin. That make no mistake about it. But when we consistently continue to give grace to the wicked, all we're doing is allowing them not to learn what it means to be righteous. So there's a line there, right, where we have to go, I love, but I still uphold righteousness. And then to be careful not to like distort scripture into this. And I say that going, someone's going to go, you just destroyed that scripture. I hope not. I hope that's not the case. Okay. And then he moves down. He said, Lord, you establish peace for us. All that we have accomplished, you have done for us. Lord our God, other lords besides you have ruled over us, and they're terrible. So like real people, kings, things like that. And they've been awful, and they've treated us terribly, but you have lifted up. They came to you. Everyone comes to you in their distress. When you discipline them, they could barely whisper a prayer. So like all of these things, like leaning towards that righteousness, right? But like God opens it up for them. And it says in verse 19, but your dead will live, Lord. Their bodies will rise. So again, I think this is something future, right? Because obviously when we die, that's all we see, we die. But God's death, right? When we're with God, it says they will live. Their bodies will rise. Let those who dwell in the dust wake up and shout for joy. So there is something after death. I believe it through what Isaiah is saying, that there is something after death. Moving on to 26 and 27. Well, this is the end of 26. So he says, go, my people. So now all these righteous people, he says, go, and I want you to go hide yourself. Right? Go shut the doors behind you. Hide yourself until his wrath has passed. Because he's going to come out and he's going to punish the world. So it says the Lord's going to punish with his sword, his fierce, great, and powerful sword, the Leviathan, the serpent. So he's going to punish the world with his serpent, with the Leviathan. He's going to use the Leviathan to punish the world. Right? So it's not going to be nice and sweet. It's going to be wicked and violent and not very good. Right? And then it says, in that day, sing about a fruitful vineyard. So this is what I believe is the faithful. Sing about a fruitful vineyard. I, the Lord, watch over it. So this fruitful vineyard, this is sing about this. So remember that there is fruit coming. I'm going to watch over this fruit, right? They're going to be my people. And then it says in verse 5, or else let them come to me for refuge. Let them make peace with me. So these are the people that are coming and making peace with the Lord and being part of his family. In days to come, Jacob will take root. Israel will bud and blossom and fill all the world with fruit. So I think, again, this is time to come. So then moving on, it says in verse 8, it says, by warfare and exile you contend with her. With his fierce blast, he drives her out as on a day the east wind blows. By this, then, Jacob's guilt will be atoned for. So this destruction that's coming is going to atone for the guilt of Jacob. They're always, and everyone asks this question, and I'm running later than I want to, but this question comes up a lot. Like, why does there need to be sacrifice? Let's just start it this way. Why, if we even go back to what we've already read, right? We've already read it for a long time. Why are bulls dying? Why are doves dying? Why are calves dying? Why are goats dying? Why are sheep dying, right? Why are these things dying for us? Why is there a punishment for us, right? The destruction that the Lord causes is our freedom. So for those of us that follow the Lord, the sacrifice that animal pays allows my freedom from the sins that I have caused, right? And I always go back to there's a responsibility there. So here we see he's going to have mass destruction, right? Like he's going to destroy the world, right? To atone for the sin of Jacob. And so all of this, as they sin and they turn away from him and they don't believe in him and they don't fully give themselves over to him, this has to be atoned for by something and someone. That's the way that it works. And not because it's what he wanted, it's because it's what we caused. Verse 12, in that day the Lord will thresh from the flowing Euphrates to the Wadi of Egypt, and you, Israel, will be gathered up one by one. A great trumpet will sound. Those perishing in Assyria and those who were exiled in Egypt will come and worship the Lord on the holy mountain of Jerusalem. So this looks like that this could be a prophecy that all of those that are in exile are going to be brought back, right? There's going to be a mass destruction. and then all of them in Israel will be brought back. Let's see if that is what happens, but that's what this looks like. It's a prophecy of. And then in following this last chapter, chapter 29, it says, "Woe to you, Ariel, Ariel," which is a name that we have not heard before. And so Ariel is another name for Jerusalem. And what it actually means, because I'm like, again, my title says a message to Jerusalem. I'm like, why would it say Jerusalem? I don't see Jerusalem anywhere in here. So it's another name for it. And what it actually is it's the Lion of God is what it actually means, right? In Hebrew, it's the Lion of God. So that's the tribe of Judah. So that's why it says Jerusalem, because it's the connection to Judah. Ariel is another name. So again, this is why many people think a lion is coming. So he says, the Lion of God, woe to you, Jerusalem, Ariel, Ariel, where David settled, right? So we also know this is the city where David settled. The Lord is going to besiege Ariel. She's going to mourn and lament. So there's going to be destruction in Jerusalem. There's going to be crying and weeping and some destruction in the land, right? And then it says, but in verse 4, brought low, you will speak from the ground. Your speech will mumble out of the dust. So you're going to be brought low, and then you're going to start to speak from the dust, right? So you're going to start to kind of like be lifted up, right? And then it says, but then your many enemies will become like fine dust. So the Lord is going to then lift these people up, destroy everyone around them, right? So it says, suddenly in an instant, the Lord Almighty will come. I'm just going to follow up with this section here, 9 through 10. Be stunned and amazed. Blind yourselves and be sightless. Be drunk, but not from wine. Stagger, but not from beer. The Lord has brought over you to a deep sleep. So these things are going to happen, but it looks like they're not going to listen. So Isaiah comes and he tells them all these things, but they're not going to listen. They're going to see some of these things happen, but they're not going to listen. And I want to note to you guys the reason that they're not going to listen, right? I'm going to follow up because it says in verse 11, for you, this whole vision, so all of these things, this whole vision is nothing but words sealed in a scroll. If you give the scroll to someone, you're going to be like, hey, can you open it? And they're going to be like, no, sorry, I don't have the key. I can't open it. And then the second person, they're going to be like, hey, can you read it? And they're going to be like, no, sorry, I can't read. So no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to understand this. It's going to be locked and put away from you, which seems awful. Why would he destroy you and hide your ability to get out and be helped, right? It says, for the Lord says this, these people come near me with their mouth. This is why. These people come near me with their mouth, honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. So this is why you can't read the scroll. This is why it's locked and you don't have the key. Because you say you're with the Lord, but your hearts are far away from the Lord. Right? This is the picture in some ways in my mind. It couldn't be clearer. He's going to destroy. You're essentially blind to it because you refuse to give your heart over to the Lord. So when we want to blame the Lord for destroying, and how dare he, and I can't believe it, it's because our hearts refuse to follow him. It's because we refuse to give him the very thing that he asks for, which is just our hearts. It's everything that is good, everything that he wants from us. So he says their worship for me is based on merely human rules. Therefore, I'm going to astound these people. I'm going to woe to them, right? Woe to those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord. Like, you can't hide anything from me. You turn things upside down. And it's talking about this potter and clay thing. So the Lord knows you, right? He's hidden these things from you because you refuse to turn from him. And then he's like, you turn these things upside down as if the potter were thought to be like the clay. Like, you're doing all these things thinking you're like me. You're not like me. I'm the God. I'm completely different. I exist without time eternally, and I've created everything. You are not a creator. You are not timeless, right? You're none of these things. Shall what is formed say to the one who has formed it, you didn't make me? Can the pot say to the potter, you know nothing? Right? So this is what, like, to me, this is what it means. You have turned from him, and then you try to usurp him. So things get destroyed. You don't say because you don't follow, and then you think that you're the one who made, right? And then you start questioning everything. So, and he's like, you're not the one to be able to do these things. You are not the God. You're not, no matter what we try to do, say, think, feel, what we hear from other people, you are not God. You are the clay. You are the thing that God created. And then it says in a very short time, so after this happens, he is going to honor, he is going to bring you back. Right? And it says, once more, the humble will rejoice in the Lord. And then in 22 it says, therefore this is what the Lord who redeemed Abraham says to the descendants of Jacob, no longer will Jacob be ashamed, no longer will their faces grow pale. They will keep my name holy, they will acknowledge the holiness of the Holy One of Jacob, and will stand in awe of the God of Israel. Those who are wayward in spirit will gain understanding. Those who complain will accept instruction. So again, I kind of think those are the middle people, right? They kind of think they know God, but they're not really too sure. We're ending today, and I feel like there's a recognition today that although these things are happening, and they are going to happen because we turn, once again, he brings his people back. Once again, he gives them another chance and he redeems them, right? So he punishes, so we see, and then he redeems them so they know that it is the Lord, right? That it is the potter and not the clay who rules. I'm ending on that today, and I know I went way over time, and I appreciate if you guys stuck with me. I hope you stuck with me. I hope you are still reading, and I'm really hoping, like, this section I really enjoyed a lot more than I enjoyed the last section.